response. I'm Nina Ritchie. I'm a folk singer and songwriter from Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm here to present a humanities project, and the subject is Gateway to Country Music. How many of y'all listen to country music? Aha! A lot of people like country music in here. Wow! Awesome. So if I was to name a city in the U.S. that is known for country music, which one would it be? Nashville, that's where I'm from. But I grew up on folk music, and I kind of had to come at it a different way. I listened to country music on the radio when I was a teenager, but I ended up listening to a lot of rock and roll and whatever my parents were listening to. They had quite the cassette collection, and I take those in my room and listen to the cassettes. But that brought me to music like Tom Waits, Enya, probably people you've never heard of. But I also came across Bruce Springsteen, and after I listened to all of the music I could from him, I came across another album at my local library called The Seeger Sessions, We Shall Overcome. And it was just a big smattering of American music that was arranged beautifully in a kind of an Americana way with it just had a lot of different blues and jazz elements in it. And it just opened up my world, and I thought, oh man, I love folk music now. And so that's what I started pursuing. And when I started to come back to country music, I realized that the roots of country music is folk music. It's from people who immigrated to the United States, however they got to the United States, and they just played their own music, and everything started to blend together, and that's how you get that kind of Americana sound. All right. Well, this picture was taken of me in front of a place called Carter Vintage Guitars in Nashville, Tennessee. And this lady here in the back, her name is Mother Maybelle Carter, and she's been pretty influential to me, especially as a guitarist. She played fingerstyle guitar with picks kind of like mine, and she was very famous for the style that she developed. She didn't have a teacher, she just kind of taught herself, and that kind of meant that she just played what naturally came to her. So she came up with her style, and people call it the Carter Scratch. Now, Mother Maybelle Carter is the mother-in-law of Johnny Cash. How many of y'all know Johnny Cash? A lot of people do. Not personally. It would be hard to do these days. Well, I'm going to start off with a song that Mother Maybelle made very famous with her band, the Carter Family. It's called Wildwood Flower. He taught me to love him and Now this is a theater called the Franklin Theater just outside of Nashville, and I got to perform that song and a couple others with a man named John McEwen. He is of the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. Do any of y'all know the song Fishin' in the Dark? All right, quite a few people do. Well, his band made that song famous, and along with Mr. Bojangles and a whole bunch of other hits. But he also recorded for Mother Maybelle, and I'll tell you a little bit about that project later, but this performance was to commemorate the album Will the Circle Be Unbroken, and so I was there representing Mother Maybelle Carter. Okay, so in this presentation we're going to deal with two questions. Where did country music come from, and how did country music become popular? So I know a lot of y'all have studied American history, and I'm going to start a little ways back so that I can give you some of the foreshadowing of what was to come with country music. So the American Civil War lasted from 1861 to 1865, and it really divided up the country along pretty specific lines. The North and the South were two different entities, and the South became very closed, and the culture kind of just percolated in there. And it was a mixture of cultures. It was Black African culture and white hillbilly culture, and it stretched from all the way up in Virginia, all the way down to Florida, and all the way west to Texas, and actually I think Kansas probably too kind of factors in there as well. All right. So we're going to kind of narrow things down to a place known as Appalachia. The Appalachian Mountain Range stretches from Newfoundland up in Canada all the way down to central Alabama and over to eastern Mississippi. And I actually live in Appalachia myself. I've moved from Nashville, Middle Tennessee, down into Chattanooga, and I live at the bottom of a mountain called Signal Mountain. It's got its own unique music down there, but it's not very country. Okay, events that led to the popularization of country music. Some of this will kind of hit close to what you're probably learning in your history classes. Have you studied about a man named Eli Whitney and his production of the cotton gin that revolutionized the cotton industry? Have you heard of Eli Whitney before? He's probably been a highlighted name in your book, and you probably had to learn the dates for him too. Well, when I was your age, I didn't care, I'll have to be honest with you, who Eli Whitney was, but he was part of the beginnings of the progress that led us to where we are today with technology. The Industrial Revolution, as it's called, it didn't make a lot of sense to me as a high schooler, but now I appreciate it a lot more because it gives us things like cell phones, you know? So in 1877, Thomas Edison invented the phonograph. We're going to specifically talk about basically recording devices that and production of sound. So he came up with the phonograph, and I'll flip a little bit forward to show you what that looks like. That is a gramophone, and that's how people listened to music back in the day. See the conical structure? That was for amplification. Now before that, people really just went out to see live music. It was either in their church or maybe they'd go to a local store and they would see live music there, but there really wasn't a way for them to take it home with them and listen to it. And the first devices that were used for production of sound, they were very rude and rudimental. They basically were just like a microphone. It would pick up the sound and produce it, but you couldn't play it back. So then they came up with a phonograph. The next thing was the 78 RPM record. How many of you collect vinyl or you've used a turntable before? All right, yeah. Well, it's the same thing as back then, and the processes haven't changed very much, but people like that warm and present sound that they get from those vinyl records. And what happens with those is they use electronic signal. They work off of electronic signal. So they were able to cut grooves into records, which are basically magnets and plastic. I don't know all about it, but then they have a needle that goes in between the grooves, and that electric current goes up into the gramophone, and then it is produced. The sound is produced and amplified in that conical structure. So then Alexander Graham Bell invented the gramophone in 1881, and they came up with the disc phonograph in 1894, and that was invented by Emil Berliner. Now in 1901, we have made a lot of progress. The Victor Talking Machine Company was established, and they produced a device called the Victrola, which is basically like your turntable, and everybody had those in their houses. And so just like anything else, people want to make money, and an industry crops up around a piece of machinery like this. So we had 3 record labels that came about: Columbia, Victor, and OK Records. And all of these record labels wound up producing country music. They found out that it was very lucrative, and then people really liked country music. The neat thing too is OK Records, which came out of Atlanta, was the only one at the time that was producing what was known as race records, or it was black music basically that they were recording and selling to folks. All right, now the next portion that was very significant is emancipation. In 1865, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery. In 1870, the 15th Amendment prohibited the denial of the right to vote based on race. In 1896, the Plessy versus Ferguson Supreme Court decision sanctioned racial segregation. And the reason I mention it is because country music is highly influenced by black music. And here's how you can tell that is true. Back in the early 20s, there was a music called ragtime music. And it basically used some rhythms that went like this. But it was all on piano. It was mostly piano music. And then there was jazz music coming up at the time, which was primarily black music as well. And then there was gospel and blues. And at this time, Ma Rainey was the primary blues musician that people would listen to. And her biggest hit song was called Crazy Blues. Now, if you listen to it, it doesn't sound quite like the structure we're normally that we associate with the blues. So it's a little wordier. Blues structure tends to have a call and response section, and it'll repeat certain lines. You'll notice this with this next song. I'm going to sing one a cappella. This lady, her name is Bessie Smith, and she is from Chattanooga, Tennessee. And she grew up in the household of a reverend who taught her music, and she actually have you ever heard of busking before? Performing on the street for money? That's what she and her brother did. And they lived on what is now Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Chattanooga. And she became very popular. She was kind of a showgirl. She danced and sang and in big productions, and then eventually she had her own shows. And she was the highest paid black musician of her time. So very interesting facts on Bessie Smith. She's known as the Empress of the Blues. I'm going to sing a bit of a song. It's called St. Louis Blues. This is one you should look up when you get home because it's one of the first music videos that was ever made. It came before MTV. So the song is St. Louis Blues, and it was written by W.C. Handy, who is known as the father of the blues. I hate to see the evening sun go down. I hate to see the evening sun go down. 'Cause my baby, he's gone and left this town. Feeling tomorrow like I feel today. Feeling tomorrow like I feel today. Gonna pack up my grip and make my getaway. St. Louis woman with her diamond rings pulls my man around my very much. Appreciate that. Okay, so the reason I mention that, I'll further explain, is that a lot of the melodies that you hear in blues music cross over into country music. And the main scale that they use is the minor pentatonic scale. It's the blues scale. And I will introduce you to a man named Jimmy Rogers in a few minutes, and you'll hear how that has one of his songs has the blues in it. All right, so the Bristol sessions. The Victor Talking Machine Company, as I was mentioning, had started wanting to record country music artists. They found out that it was lucrative. So what they did was they sent a man named Ralph Peer. I'm going to skip a little ahead and grab him. That's what he looked like. He said that he knew how to record those hillbillies, and now I got to go back. Okay. The hillbillies were people living up in the hills of mainly western Virginia and eastern Tennessee, and they didn't particularly like being called hillbillies, but we called it hillbilly music back in the day, and or down home music, but it was rebranded country music so as not to be offensive. All right. Now, Eck Robertson, he lived in Texas, and he was probably one of the first country music performers to ever be recorded, and he was recorded by the Victor Talking Machine Company. And he was just a fiddler and recorded 4 songs. They were duets. And he was also a traveling musician. He traveled with the medicine shows. Has anybody ever heard of the band Old Crow Medicine Show? Anybody? Okay, I see some hands going up. Well, that harkens back to these days of the medicine shows. And basically, people didn't have a lot of entertainment back in the day. And there were people who wanted to make a business off selling products, so they do it door to door. And the best thing that they could do is go to a small town and kind of reel everybody in. They put out the word, then they'd come to town on a tour, and what they wanted to do was sell products. So it would be like your ads on YouTube that are so annoying and you want to skip them. Well, you kind of get suckered in sometimes if you see a musician you know, or there's some kind of entertainment associated with it, and that's what happened with the medicine shows. They were there to sell elixirs that were cure-alls, tonics, and things to cure whatever ails you. But they would bring with them different musical acts like Eck Robertson and Jimmy Rogers, and they would entertain the audience, and then at the end they would talk to them about the product they wanted to sell. Okay. This is the birthplace of country music. It's a museum up in Bristol. So as I was asking you where you thought country music came from, everybody says Nashville, and you're right, but the birthplace of country music, they say, is in Bristol, Tennessee. Bristol is a little town that straddles the border of Virginia and Tennessee. What happened was they sent Ralph Peer, the producer, down to record the hillbillies, and he recorded in a hat shop warehouse. And it just happened to be on the Tennessee side, so Tennessee takes credit for being the birthplace. So what Ralph Peer did is he had a whole team of engineers come down with him, and he sent all of the equipment by railway. So one of the modern conveniences was the railroad system. And they came down to this small town. I've recently visited this place, and it's still pretty small. And they put out the call to all of the hillbillies and said, do you have a band? Do you make music? Do people like your music? If you're interested in recording a record, come to this recording session. So they recorded for about a week, and all of that music, they sold it, and then they found out that they had a few stars among the artists. Okay, the stars of the sessions, they were Jimmy Rogers, the Carter Family, and the Stonemans. I already played one Carter Family song. I'll play another one a little bit later. But I'm going to sing a song by Jimmy Rogers. It's called T for Texas. And remember I was saying that the music got kind of blended. Well, people immigrating from the Swiss regions, Germany, they had a custom of yodeling. How many of y'all have listened to yodeling before? It's kind of a funny thing, isn't it? It's funny for me too. I didn't grow up around yodeling. But you'll hear some of it in Texas as well because there's a large German population there. All right, and that is where Jimmy Rogers came from. This song is known as the Blue Yodel, T for Texas. T for Texas, T for Tennessee, T for Texas, T for Tennessee, T for Belmont. That girl has made a wreck out of me. Yodelay, yodelay, yodelay. If you don't want me, mama, you sure don't have to stop. If you don't want me, mama, you sure don't have to stop. I've had more pretty women than a passenger train can haul. Yodelay, yodelay, yodelay. Thank you very much. So that was one of his very popular songs. And the funny thing is when he recorded originally, he didn't do that great of a job with his recordings. He didn't feel like he had really made his mark. So he actually set up another recording session up in New Jersey with Victor Records. And they recorded that song, and he skyrocketed. He was very famous, and he had a much more polished sound than most of the hillbillies. He wasn't really a hillbilly himself. He was from Texas, so he had a little bit of a more modern sound. Now I'm going to sing a song now. It's called You've Been a Friend, and it's by the Carter family. This was a band that was from Western Virginia, and they were just kind of a family band. Mother Maybelle Carter, A.P. Carter, and A.P.'s wife, Sarah Carter. All right, and you'll notice it has kind of a nasally quality to it, and some of the lyrics are a little bit sad. It's a very impoverished area still to this day in Appalachia, and primarily coal mining is the industry there. So they just played music on their porches, kind of just to lift the burdens and entertain each other. So here you go. First I saw your smiling face. All right, well, that brings me to somebody else who is a little bit polished, but he actually came from the city of Bristol, and I'm going to start to tie in Bristol with Nashville now, because Tennessee, Ernie Ford is sort of the missing link, I guess you could say. He was a touring musician. He became wildly popular, and one song he was very popular for was one called 16 Tons, a coal miner's song. And he just had a very fresh presentation. He traveled all the way to California, and then he made his home in Nashville. And I'm going to sing a little bit of 16 Tons. Some people say that man is made out of mud. The poor man's made out of muscles and blood. Muscles and blood and skin and bone. A mind that's weak and a back that's strong. You load 16 tons and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can go and hold my soul to the company store. The sun didn't shine. Picked up my shovel and I walked to the mine. Loaded 16 tons of number 9 coal, and the straw boss said, well, the bless of my soul, you load 16 tons, and what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can go and hold my soul to the company store. That was short. Thank you very much. You should look up that song, 16 Tons. All right, so that brings us up to Music City, and this is Broadway Street, and it's where all the music happens. And basically, everybody comes here to try their hand at becoming a country music star. And pretty much all of the repertoire is not original music. It's either classic country or modern country. I will skip ahead just a little bit. But the reason why Music City even exists is because of this show here, the WSM Grand Ole Opry. Well, with new devices being created, radios came into the home, and this is one of the shows that came on. WSM was an AM station and very, very popular, but it wasn't so popular until the Grand Ole Opry show. It used to be called the Saturday Night Barn Dance, and they recorded this show at the Ryman Auditorium. This is what the old Ryman looked like, and the new, it hasn't changed all that much, but what it was originally was a church. And I'll give you a little bit of background on it. It's named for a man named Tom Ryman, but he owned a lot of river boats that were on the Tennessee River. And they were having a little bit of a problem down there on the Tennessee River with drunkenness. Whiskey was a vice that was destroying a lot of families down there, and I'd say Nashville still has a drinking problem. But back then they tried to do something about it, and they brought a gospel preacher there to have tent revivals. And basically what happened is they put out the call for people to come and listen to the gospel, and he would preach, and people would be born again, and it would change the city. And that's exactly what happened with Nashville. Now, one person who was affected by the sermons was Tom Ryman, and he listened to the history to the gospel message, and it changed the way that he operated his business. He decided that he was not going to serve alcohol on these steamboats anymore. And the other thing he did was he started actually going and spreading the gospel by taking a wagon out, and kind of like the medicine shows. He would take kind of a wagon, and then he'd take performers with him who would sing, and they would hold church just on the side of the road, and people were very familiar with Tom Ryman's wagon. And what he would do is take up a collection, and it all went towards creating this church. It was called the Unity Gospel Tabernacle, and it was just a place where Christians could all come together and worship. And what he started to do was bring speakers to talk on different subjects, and sometimes he would have performers come in. And when he passed away, they decided to change the name to the Ryman Auditorium, and they started having other kinds of shows in there, and eventually they had the Grand Ole Opry. So that's how Nashville came into being. The Grand Ole Opry actually moved. That building went into disrepair for a while, and they actually have made it even better than it was before, probably acoustically. And they have moved to Music Valley Drive. I lived across the street from the Grand Ole Opry most of my life. And once it moved there, a lot of those old Opry stars that, like Mother Maybelle Carter and Roy Acuff, who was known as the father of country music, or the king of country music, rather, a lot of those people were kind of not being remembered anymore because rock and roll was kind of drowning everything else out, everything that was popular before. The Beatles made such a big difference in the U.S. And during the time that the Opry changed locations, a band came over from California. It was a rock and roll band, but had country roots, and they had grown up on country music. They're called the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, and they created an album called Will the Circle Be Unbroken? This is what they looked like. This is 1972, and they were hippies. And it was just after the Vietnam War, and the tensions were running high throughout that time. So when they arrived, the country musicians were kind of like, who are these people? And they looked at them a little suspiciously and thought, how are they going to play my music? Because their intention was to back the country stars in the studio and create an album with them as their backing band. But soon they figured out that these guys had good intentions and really wanted to honor their music. Some of these folks were Merle Travis, who's really well known for his picking style. It's called Travis picking. Jimmy Martin was a bluegrasser. Bluegrass music is primarily found in Kentucky. Earl Scruggs, some of you might know from a TV show called The Beverly Hillbillies. Have you ever seen The Beverly Hillbillies? It's really good comedy. But he played the banjo, and he and his partner Lester Flatts were very well known for their music. Well, he was sort of the in for the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band. He went and found the other Opry stars and introduced them and kind of made them realize it's okay to play with these guys. They're good. All right. So I am going to be playing a song now called Will the Circle Be Unbroken? And I'll tell you why in just a second. The Country Music Hall of Fame is where we house a lot of memorabilia of the country stars, and they still have shows within this hall. This isn't the auditorium, but this is one of those side rooms inside the museum. It's called the Circle Room, and the painting that you saw on the front when it said Gateway to Country Music, that is the one that's in the far at the back. And in the middle is a circle, and on the Opry stage there's also a circle. And in this circle, if you ever go visit, and I recommend going to visit this, if you like country music, you'll find it fascinating. This circle is very special. It is acoustically so good that you can step into the middle and people don't really hear you on the outside, but you sing like an angel on the inside. Even if you can't carry a tune, you're going to get to hear the sound of your voice like you've never heard it before. All right. So how many of y'all know the song Will the Circle Be Unbroken? Aha, that means you can sing it with me. Teach? Okay. Well, this one is one that a lot of country people like to cover, either in bluegrass or any other genre, folk music as well. It's kind of sad, and for a long time I thought it was a little morose, but it has a lot of heart to it. It's actually a gospel song that comes from England. The Carter family popularized it, and now everybody sings it. Once you hear the chorus once, you'll know it, and you can sing along with me too.
Come rolling toward
First, and you're going to start singing because you actually just want to live. In the circle, the unbroken, by and by, Lord, by and by. There's a better home awaiting in the sky, Lord, in the sky. In the sky, Lord, in the sky. In the sky, Lord, in the sky. Well, thank you very much. Be brave, you guys, and start singing. It's a great world out there, and we can all sing together. All right, thank you for listening to my show. I hope you learned something. There is the final pictures here. This is me and John McEwen, and we were singing probably Wildwood Flower at this time. All right. Well, thank you very much, and if you think to, look me up on YouTube. I'm under Nina Ritchie Music. I'm also on Instagram and everywhere else pretty much. All right, have a great rest of your day. Bye.